Hey guys, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. Yet again, another week, another review. Today we're reviewing episode 8 of Put a Ring on It, and a lot happened in this episode. It was emotionally taxing, emotionally draining, and I felt some type of way for Alexia. So let's unpack it all and talk about every single thing that happened in this episode. So this episode actually picks up from Kai and Darian's meetup. Last week we left them at their closure meeting at a restaurant. And so we picked up right where we left, where Kai basically dropped the bomb and was like, he wasn't worried about it when we slept together. So here goes Darian in his confessional that actually lets us know that, well, actually, Kai first lets us know that they slept together after their fourth date. And what had happened is that Darian actually called her over to come to the condo, and she went over there and then they ended up sleeping together. So in his confessional, he's just like, yes, I cheated. I was going through a lot at the time, but after I did what I did, being with Kai only reminded me what a good woman Alexia is. Kai's only concerned about her feelings and her being ghosted, and she just wants to know like what was up and why he was dealing with her like that. So he lets her know that, he was just looking for the right time to let her know and let her know what was going on and where his headspace was at. And she actually said to him, like, the right time to let me know would have been the second time I was at the condo. So I don't know if that means that they slept together twice or if it just meant that she was visiting him regularly there. He tries to reassure her after, tell her like, oh, I didn't mean to hurt you. But then she was just like, look, dead all of that. And she was just like, what happened to the whole my condo is your condo talk? I guess that's what he told her. And so he was just like, well, I'm gonna sell the condo because he wants to do what's right, or what Alexia wants to make things right between them. She then says to him, so you used me. So he says, no, it's not a matter of using you. I thought you wanted to make me feel better. So she says, yeah, of course I wanted to make you feel better, but I also wanted you, and I thought you wanted me. So from where she's coming from, she's just like, I thought this was a mutual situation. But then she says, I'm realizing that that's obviously not the case. So Darian being Darian, there was absolutely no remorse. He basically let her know, like, look, you knew what the situation was. You knew I had Alexia and you came in here guns blazing. Like, basically he's saying he doesn't have anything to apologize for because she knew what it was from the get-go. She kind of looked very, like, I guess, turned off, and she says to him, like, you know what, you're a mess. You don't know what you want. And she proceeds to tell him all the reasons why he's staying with Alexia. He's just gonna stay with her because it's comfortable. It's what it's what he's used to. So the thing I don't like about Kai is, like, she pretends like she's fine, but you could see that she was butthurt here. And especially from her attacking the relationship with Alexia. Yeah, we know his relationship with Alexia is not perfect, but at the end of the day, at this very moment that he's speaking to you, that is his woman. So I find she's acting like she and him were in a relationship and like he's leaving her for Alexia. Like, it was totally your choice to go ahead and sleep with him because you already knew he was in a relationship. And unfortunately, she processed that to mean that he likes her or likes her enough to leave Alexia, when it seemed like he was just looking for an outlet. Things were just not going right and he just needed somewhere to be, somewhere to put his you know what and feel better about himself. And once that was done, he was done with her. I felt like that was the perfect time to bow out gracefully, but there's nothing graceful about Kai. So of course she proceeds to ask questions that have nothing to do with her. Does she know we slept together, her being Alexia? Are you going to tell her that we slept together? So he says no, she doesn't know yet, but he has to tell her, trying to pretend to be an upstanding guy. So then she says, which totally lost me, oh, well, then get her on the phone. Let's tell her together. And I'm just like, is Kai all right? Like, that's such an absurd suggestion. But anyway, he was just like, no, he's going to speak to her one-on-one because he doesn't want to embarrass her. And she was just like, oh, well, you already embarrassed her. Yeah, he did embarrass her, but you embarrassed yourself. So which one is worse, sis? Which one is worse? Anyway, eventually the conversation concludes, and then she holds out her hands and put them in his hands and then says to him like, oh, she hopes for the best and she wishes him and Alexia nothing but the best and hope that they find true love. And he was just like, well, I don't really believe you because obviously it's not genuine. So she's just lying through her teeth right now. I guess she realized I don't know that it's what's said and done is said and done. Like he's made his decision, he has rejected the fact that or he has rejected wanting to be with her. So there really is nothing else to do except accept the situation. So she gives him a double high five and then she says, "Well, I'm leaving and wish you all the best. The experience was fun for what it was." And then she left. Thank God. I hope that's the last we see of Kai and now we can deal with the actual relationship that is happening between Alexia and Darian. Next, we have LaRonda and Derek who meet up for their second date, and LaRonda lets us know in her confessional that she likes Derek, and what she likes about him that's different from Sean is the fact that he's very aware, I guess self-aware, and he stands like in his own conviction. So they begin to speak a bit, and we find out a bit about Derek in terms of even though he's an older guy, he's never been married, and for him, he really would like to settle down right now and get married, as well as they shared some similar what I want to say, like him and LaRonda think the same way just from their conversation. However, he did get into a little tidbit where he started to express to her that she shouldn't hold back in terms of what she wants from a partner because she's worried about her partner being fragile, because the conversation of marriage came up and she feels two ways that, well, she feels one way about it in terms of the person can know you want to be married, but you don't necessarily need to pressure them. And he sees nothing wrong with pressuring because he's just like, if someone wants to be married and you start to apply pressure, then they'll follow suit. If you're worried about their fragility, then you're going to kind of be stuck in that space where nothing is happening. So he expressed himself well and she respected it. They didn't seem to, it wasn't like a conflict type of disagreement. Like they didn't necessarily share the same point of view on that, but it was all fun and games in terms of there were light moments in between. He joked it off, and so I quite enjoyed Derek and LaRonda together. She did say in her confessional that if she was single, then he would be a contender. I think she likes the way he thinks. She likes what he has to say, but realistically, I don't think she's attracted to him, and that's what I have to say about that date. The next scene led us to Jessica and Eric's home where they decided that they wanted to tackle the assignment. Well, really, it was Jessica who said, let's tackle the marriage assignment that Dr. Nicole gave them. So if you remember last week, they were supposed to talk about their vision of marriage. So once the conversation started, it led to Jessica opening up about something that bothered her. Apparently, Mother's Day had passed and Eric did not celebrate it, did not celebrate her, didn't do anything for her, basically. So she spoke to him and let him know that that's something that actually hurt her. And then in her confessional, we find out more about the reason why. Apparently, she was adopted by her aunt and she doesn't know her birth mom. And so she has issues with feeling unwanted, and that has brought up a lot of insecurities in her. So she did say that when he didn't acknowledge her being a good mother, it kind of brought up back some of those feelings of, I guess, not being acknowledged, not being wanted, not being celebrated. And he was very nonchalant about it, to be honest. He was kind of like, oh, well, I tried, but it didn't really work out. And now that you're telling me this, I can do better for next year. He didn't really seem to care. And I mean, us judging as outsiders from this show only, we can't really say much because Jessica really only mentioned her kids maybe 2 episodes ago. Up until 2 episodes ago, we did not even know she was a mom to 2 daughters. So we can't speak on whether or not she's a good mom, but Eric should know, and I feel for her. The next thing that the conversation led to was the fact that Eric actually wants another child. So when they're talking about how do we see our marriage, he says like for him, he feels like because of his career, he wasn't around a lot for his other kids. And so once he's married, that's something he would like to do, have one more child. He wants to be a stay-at-home dad. I think he was trying to say he wants to be a more hands-on dad. Whereas Jessica's vision is totally different. She's kind of envisioning things like, okay, been there, done that, already have 2 kids. They're going to be living with us. Maybe they move out within the next 10 years or so. And once they move out, she wants it to just kind of be her and Eric enjoying life. So Eric actually said in his confessional, like for him, he would not marry a woman who does not want another baby. And so for him, that person can hit the door. And I was like, wow, that's pretty harsh. He actually told her like he wouldn't marry someone who doesn't want to have another baby. Then he joked about having a baby outside. She did not think that was cute. Nor did I, sir. Nor did I. So they definitely have some things to work out because they don't see their future the same. And from the sounds of it, they definitely don't want the same things in regards to where they stand with the children. The next scene is Alexia, who is walking towards Dr. Nicole's, I guess, building. She's on the outside. We're getting a whole monologue about what she has found out. So now we know she knows what we know because Darian apparently told her after his closure meeting with Kai, like what had transpired between the two of them. And so now she's up to date and she has a lot of emotions. And so she's going for a one-on-one with Dr. Nicole. So she gets inside and then she tells Dr. Nicole what she found out and expressed that she feels very hurt and says the process has allowed her to see things that she did not see before. So Dr. Nicole said to her that, is it that you didn't see these things, or is it that you didn't allow yourself to see these things because you didn't want to acknowledge them? Listen, Dr. Nicole was dropping bars this episode because she also said that in order to sweep something underneath the rug, you need to be aware of it. So it's the only difference is when it's under the rug, it's not as out in the open, or as you're not as able to see it, because when it's swept under the rug, it's not as out in the open as before, so you feel more comfortable, but you are very much aware of it. So essentially she's saying to her that you've known this all along, it's just that the process has brought it out in such a way that you cannot ignore it. After that, she also said to her that you allow yourself to believe Darian's words over his actions, and it's as though you don't trust yourself. So she's asking her to ask herself, why doesn't she trust her gut feeling? Like, why does she go against herself and believe the words that he says instead of believing and trusting in herself? Her response was what I expected. She said that Darian is her best friend and she thinks of him as even outside of their romantic relationship, like she genuinely sees him as her best friend, and she's just hurt by the way everything happened because she genuinely just loves him, even though she admits that she knows that he might not be the best person for her. So after that, Dr. Nicole says to her, there's a difference between men and boys because men do not destroy what they've built, whereas boys, if you've even watched a child with like Legos, they will build it and smash it down. So basically it was just a great metaphor to let her know that who you're dealing with hasn't sorted out himself, so he won't be able to build anything substantial or stable with you because he continuously over these 14 years, it's just been a cycle of like, oh, we build up, we destroy, and they've just been going around like that, but they're really not getting anywhere. It all came down to Dr. Nicole asking her, like, what is it that you have been trying not to see? And she eventually just comes out and says that I've been trying not to see that maybe he's just not the person for me. And I understand why she was so startled by that concept, because when she said it, she had to say to herself, well, it's been a lot of time. And I mean, of course, from 19 years old till 34, that's a lot of time to dedicate to a person, and then just you have nothing to show for it. She has no family with him or anything. And that's another thing she pointed out, that she says she also has recognized that she's the one pushing the family issue, because he has a family, even though it's not with like I guess a nuclear family, but he has children is what she was trying to say, whereas she doesn't have any kids because she's been waiting on the marriage. So she's realizing that he has just been out for him. And so Dr. Nicole says to her, well, if he loves him and you love him, who is loving you? And I mean, I was like, bars, Dr. Nicole, bars. We all stopped and thought about that, because even me, I was just like, yeah, that's actually true. Like, you're out here just pushing and grinding for this guy. You gave up a career for this guy. You relocated for this guy. And it just seems like he's just all about him and he expects to be forgiven every single time. At the end of all of that, she finally admits that she needs to take some time to work on herself. And it seems like she's finally ready to step away from Darian. Now we're back with Sean and LaRonda at their home, and they've decided to tackle the marriage assignment. And from their little conversation, I mean, I've ascertained that these two don't have the same views at all. So they start by talking about the actual wedding, or like, what they want at the wedding. LaRonda wants something small and intimate. She's thinking maybe 20 people. She doesn't see the need for any more than 3 groomsmen. Meanwhile, Sean wants the whole world there. He wants 13 groomsmen. And then they get to talking about kids, and she's like, boy, I think she's ready. She says she wants to definitely adopt, and she's thinking around 4 kids. Sean wants 7 kids, like a whole football team. And they're talking about things like divorce, and for her, she feels like divorce is like a very, 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 very last resort. And Sean seems to take it a bit more lightly, like, oh, if things are just not going according to plan, he's okay with getting a divorce. These two are left and right, and they need to find a middle ground somewhere. And I just find it a bit strange that Sean's main basis for not wanting to get married is wanting to build himself up financially and be able to stand on his own 2 feet or whatever. But you want you want to waste money on just this big exorbitant wedding, which is really only one day, and then have 7 kids. Who's going to take care of all of those kids, sir? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like people do things just because it sounds good, but kids are genuinely an investment. Like, you're investing in your children so that they can have a better future. And there are just certain things in life where the quality makes more sense than the quantity, and children are one of those things. So having a set of kids just to have them doesn't make any sense, especially when you're not the breadwinner in the relationship. But do you? Build the struggle children for the future. The next scene was Jessica and Sean, who are going on their third date, and they're going on a high fly date. High fly is basically like indoor skydiving. So they get on their suits, she goes, and then he goes, and then eventually afterwards they're laughing, giggling, having a great time, and they sit down to talk a little bit. I feel like Sean says the same thing every week. I really like you. I want to go on more dates. He's like, I want to go on 4, 5, 6, 7 dates. Like, because obviously they've acknowledged that this is their third date. So I don't know if production is forcing Jessica to go on these dates or what, but I'm not buying it, because out of her mouth, she's like, yeah, every time I'm with Sean, I have such a great time. This is in her confessional. And then when she's there and he's expressing that he wants to continue going on dates, she's like, oh, I have to keep thinking about it, but she enjoys spending time with him and all of this great stuff. But then he tries to play slick, and he gets a bit corny. Like, he was making a joke about being able to read minds, and he said to himself, like, well, he said out loud, like, right now I know you're thinking about, is his lips soft? And then he leans in, and I guess because she didn't make any movements, he was like, oh no, I'm kidding. I was like, no, you weren't, sir. No, you were not. You were trying to bait her, but because she wasn't moving towards you, you played it off. And so for me, that tells me a lot. It tells me that she's just not into him. I don't know why they're forcing this, because I'm not seeing a mutual liking. Even though she's saying she likes him, her actions are not giving me that at all. This next scene was the major scene of the episode, because now we have Alexia, who is walking towards Dr. Nicole, and Darian, who's also doing the same, because they've agreed to a final meetup with her to kind of hatch out their issues. And of course, they aren't staying together, so they're coming separately. So they both get inside, and everybody does their greeting. They sit down, and Dr. Nicole addresses Darian first, and he starts by saying, well, things are not in a good place. Everything kind of up in the air, but Alexia will not speak to me and has not been speaking to me, and I have not been staying at the house. So I guess he's at the condo. So he eventually says that he had plans to tell her everything that transpired, but he was waiting until he sold the condo and did all the other requirements that she had, so that way, by the time she finds out, I guess she would feel good or feel better about the fact that he made some progress in terms of the things that she wanted. I don't know what kind of logic that is, but we are dealing with Darian, so we just have to take it for what it is and move forward. So Alexia actually chimed in and said, when were you going to tell me? Because had she not blurted it out, I don't think you would have said anything. Now, the she in this situation, I'm not sure who that is. I can only assume it's Kai. But then on the same hand, it doesn't make sense to me that it would be Kai, because when would Kai, Darren, and Alexia have been together? So I don't know, maybe just the way production chopped the conversation, I was a little bit confused as to who she may be in this situation. If you know, just tell me in the comments below. So she tells him that, you've lost my trust. I feel violated. I feel disrespected. And then she eventually asked him, like, why did you go ahead and sleep with her? So he said, well, we were going through it. There was a lot that was happening, and he just needed to feel good in the moment. So he called her over, and he said he felt okay until the following day after. So you know how you'll be doing that bad thing? I think with most cheaters, this is how it goes. Well, cheaters with a conscience, at least. You feel bad after the deed. So Dr. Nicole chimes in and speaks directly to Darian and says that, listen, from my understanding, it's coming across like you do not grasp the fact that your negative actions have consequences. It's as though you think that as long as your needs are met, everything is supposed to just be, bypassed. And he actually agreed with Dr. Nicole and said that, yes, that is a correct analysis, because she asked him directly, like, am I correct? Dr. Nicole eventually tells them, like, look, two halves does not make a whole. So you guys need to start, working on yourselves. And then she asks Alexia, so where do you stand? And Alexia agreed. She said, moving forward, she says she has to stop worrying about him and start putting herself first. And then when he was asked the question, he actually says he wants to continue the relationship, but Dr. Nicole was like, is that best for both of you? Does it make sense to continue on this treadmill where you're like running and stopping, running and stopping? And then he actually says that, I'm just looking at her now in his confessional, he just wants to hold her and calm her down, because I guess he has realized how just she came across looking very defeated, very sad. You could see that something inside of her is just broken. It's like, you know something, but then finally something has happened to confirm it to a point where you can no longer ignore it. That was the vibe Alexia was giving off. It was very easy to feel sorry for her in this episode, because obviously she's received the blow of her life. She thought she was gonna marry this man. She's been with him since she was a teen. Eventually, Dr. Nicole asks him, like, what is it that you want to say to her? Because obviously he wasn't able to speak to her before. And so he holds her hand, which, by the grace of God, I don't know how she allowed that. Because, guys, maybe I'm petty. Because when I'm in a mood, I don't want to be touched. You can't touch my hand, none of that. And then eventually says to her, I'm sorry. He apologized for his actions. And says that he realizes that he needs to work on himself. All the good stuff. But to be honest, I feel like Darian is just a master at saying what he needs to say. I don't necessarily get the vibe that he means anything that he's saying, but he even had the nerve to break down and started like with his little I guess tears. At least Alexia said that this was the first time she saw him tearing up. Me never seen no tears because his face did look well dry. But if she saw tears and then she started like wiping his face, I was like, oh no, because it would not be me. You could cry a river. I wouldn't even have looked at him, but clearly she has a better heart than mine. So he says to Dr. Nicole like he doesn't want to leave and not go home with Alexia. And Dr. Nicole tells him one word. She just says consequence, like letting him know that these are the consequences of the actions that you have chosen to do. So obviously then he says this is not the outcome he hoped for. He had hoped that coming here would have fixed or mended their relationship. And he's just really sad that this is the outcome, because at the end of all of this, naturally they're both gonna leave the process and they're leaving as no longer a couple. And so I guess it's just hitting both of them really hard that this might be the end of the relationship. Like this doesn't sound like an end that you're gonna get back together from. So yeah, and that was the end of their session. It was pretty rough. It was taxing emotionally, and I'm sure just like being in that relationship, like thinking from Alexia's point of view, having been with someone so long and then for it to conclude this way, and embarrassingly no less, just out and brazy, on national television, sir, no. So as we know, at the end of every episode, Dr. Nicole meets up with all the couples, and this episode was no different. So that's the scene we're at now. All the couples come in, except of course, Alexia comes in alone and Darian is missing. So she starts by letting everybody know where they're at, what had happened, and the reason why Darian isn't there, which I don't need to run through because we already know. And then just let them know that she has chosen that she doesn't want to be in the process with him anymore, and that they've separated. And so she's also going to be leaving after letting them know what has transpired. And then Dr. Nicole just says, listen, I'm saddened for you in terms of the situation, but at the same time I'm so like proud of your growth, and I'm happy that you've received the clarity that you needed from this process. She actually congratulated her on finally doing what is best for her. So that's Dr. Nicole's low-key way of saying it's about time you got rid of that ancient nigga, but just in a more professional manner, And then Dr. Nicole asked her, is it okay to give you a hug? She hugged her. Like the way she was looking, she looked like someone who needed a hug. And then Alexia proceeded to hug the rest of the cast members, and she made her way out, and that was the end of her. So moving on from that, we continue with the rest of the couples, where Dr. Nicole asked them about the marital assignment, and everyone kind of gave her the rundown. So Sean and LaRonda told her like all the things that they discovered in terms of the kids and the wedding and so forth. And then we moved on to Jessica and Eric, who also did the same, but spoke more deeply about the issues that they were having in terms of him wanting a child and she not wanting any, and she actually said that for her, she's a baby mama already of two girls and she doesn't want to be a baby mama again. So if she was to consider having another child, it would still be in the confines of marriage. And she just doesn't like that. He just wants to do things out of sequence. He's not okay with talking about kids, not okay with talking about marriage, but he's okay with talking about another child. And she said she just wants to do something different because she's been there, done that already. And then she spoke about the Mother's Day issue, of course, and how that made her feel. And you know what, guys? This is something I will never get when people say that being married is such a huge commitment and it's not necessary and labels aren't necessary. Listen, labels are very necessary. That's how you know where to put what. That's how you know what things are. And how is getting married such a huge commitment, but having kids aren't? Explain, because I'm trying to find out. Like, when you have a kid together, that's a lifetime commitment. That's something that doesn't go away. It cannot be reversed. You can get married and get divorced if you want, and that's the end of it. Like, I never have to speak to you again. But people yet and still act like having kids is just like a casual thing. Like, oh, let me just run me some money. Like, run me that handbag. Like, it's just for the time being. Make it make sense, please. Anyway, after all of that, the show came to an end, and then we saw some snippets for next week in terms of how Jessica and Eric are going to work through their issues. And apparently he's having some issues with his mom, as well as Shauna and LaRonda talking about their issues because, of course, now that Alexia and Darian are gone, we did see a little snippet of Alexia speaking about the fact that she wanted Darian out of her house. So I think we're coming down to it. There are only two couples left to decide if they want to put a ring on it or go their separate ways. And so that's it for this week's episode, guys. And talk to me in the comments. This episode was very, very emotionally taxing. I know it would resonate with a lot of people who have been through a similar situation. So talk to me in the comments. Share your own experience and what you have learned from it, or how you overcame that period in your life, how you healed from it. And also talk to me about your point of view on like Darian's stance. Did you think he did anything wrong? Did you feel like Kai was wrong? Do you think she was within her right to be as brazen as she was? How do you feel about Eric's behavior towards Jessica? He's a bit nonchalant in terms of, oh, if you don't want a kid, I could just get rid of you type thing. Do you think that's okay? And talk to me about Sean and LaRonda. Like, do you think it's all right for these two to go ahead getting married, considering they don't want any of the same things? Let me know, guys. And until next week,